Hi, welcome to Off Script. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Today on the show, we are taking a look at Thanksgiving, the new Eli Roth horror film. A surprising send-up to slasher horror. I didn't expect it. I'm excited to talk about it. We're also taking a look at Alexander Payne's The Holdovers, a cozy Christmas feature set in 1970 at Barton Academy in Western Massachusetts, starring Paul Giamatti and newcomer Dominic Sessa. We're going to talk about The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. We didn't actually plan on covering this movie on the show, but Andy went and saw it. I have not seen it. It's a micro review, just like Priscilla last week. Folks on YouTube seem to love that. We're also going to talk about a couple of trailers that are coming up soon. We need to talk about the news. And before we get to everything, a bit of personal show news that I just want to open the show with real fast. Andy, we had quite the run on YouTube last week, and I don't have YouTube up on the Facebook live stream to see it. You can go check out our YouTube channel. A lot of great things are happening, but fundamentally what happened is we got a little backed up in production and ended up posting individual reviews really quick, day after day, 5 days in a row. And we got a ton of people looking at our Marvels review and our Priscilla review. And I'll admit that I was a little forward with the marketing on the Marvels review, and I had a big thumbnail with Carol Danvers looking back at letters that say "not bad," and I said, "Don't believe the hate," because every review I saw of the Marvels on YouTube is all bad. God, everybody hates that movie. Oh, it's so bad. Marvel's got to change direction. We've been talking about Marvel pivoting for weeks, months on this show. But The Marvels is genuinely not as bad as people thought. We did not say it is a great film. We didn't even say it's a super good film. My God, people have been mad at us on the internet. How did this happen? What? We had 70-something comments and people telling us we're morons? It's amazing.
I'm blaming your thumbnail because just like a lot of people are hating on this movie who have not seen it. A lot of people hated on our video, and I guarantee you didn't watch the whole thing. They saw the thumbnail and decided to instantly start keyboard warrioring.
Yeah.
And that's largely what happened. And a couple of people did watch, for sure, but a lot of it is just instant reactions, not watching the content at all.
I've got the thumbnail up here on Facebook Live. Check it out. I little baited people, but for the most part, I feel comfortable with what we said
Name
about
of the game,
review.
baby.
It's available, from last week's episode 232. Go check it out and tell me if I'm nuts. Leave a comment, I guess, with everybody else. Hey, for what it's worth, all those comments, all those likes, they only bump the channel. So for every hater out there that thought we were wrong about the Marvels, thanks for the view, all right? And with that, we should go to the news. Our first story this week, new Jason Bourne movie in the works at Universal. Jesus, Andy, they're making another Jason Bourne. Not starring Jeremy Renner, according to Variety. This one's actually, supposedly, Universal's planning on approaching, I should say, Matt Damon to see if they can get him to sign on. This is so early in development, it may not even happen, but it is starring, going to have a certain director attached to this, a newcomer that I'm excited to see what they have going on. Wait, what is this about? New Jason Bourne movie.
So I'm going to use this joke I've been using all week. Old Man Bourne. we're having this resurgence of old, stars that are people that were stars in a certain role. I think of Hugh Jackman coming back in Wolverine, and that movie Logan comes from the comic Old Man Logan. So I'm going to be using that joke when they keep doing these. Matt Damon, who's in his 50s now, coming back for this super spy Jason Bourne. If you don't remember, because it's actually been quite a while now, the Jason Bourne movies were these spy action movies starring Matt Damon in the 2000s. This is when Hollywood was pivoting away from the action stars like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Steven Seagal, these kind of big buff dudes, to the more everyday man who could still fight and whoop ass. And that's what Matt Damon kind of embodied. There were 3 of these films. They were very, very successful. They tried to have Jeremy Renner kind of take over. Jeremy Renner for a while was going to be the guy. He was going to take over for Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible. Yeah, same thing for Matt Damon in these Bourne movies, and it just
he got run over by that snowplow. Boy, yeah, that was the end of it for him. I hear he's doing well, by the way. He's 10 months into recovery, so I hope we see Jeremy Renner in more stuff.
So yeah, we're bringing this thing of we can't cast new people in older properties. They're so afraid. So we're bringing back the old guys to reprise these roles. This is a big action movie, so I don't know if there's no details on the plot. So who knows if Jason Bourne is coming back or if he's got a new young protege. Probably going to be a young girl because that's what they seem to want to pair all these old guys up with, like Haley Steinfeld and Jeremy Renner and Hawkeye, like that kind of dynamic. So we'll see.
I'm excited by the potential talent attached, namely All Quiet on the Western Front filmmaker Edward Berger. We covered All Quiet on the Western Front here on the show. Came out on Netflix, earlier this year? Last year, because I think it was up for Oscars, right? Yeah, it was. It won an Oscar for, I think, sound design. Excellent picture. Really exciting. German director. We'll have to see. There's not even a script right now. This is early stages. I'm sure Matt Damon would love to get a payday, but like last I heard, he did an interview before Oppenheimer, and he was saying that he's been really choosy about roles. He's been really particular. He doesn't want to just do the same old. Like he might turn this down. Like he's getting up there. We'll see. Then again, I'm sure it'd be a sweet payday. Speaking of things that are coming back, this new Karate Kid movie that just got announced today, the day we're doing the show, Tuesday, is going to be uniting Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio, star of the original Karate Kid series and the Cobra Kai, right? He's in that show on Netflix. And Jackie Chan, star of the Karate Kid remake, starring Jaden Williams,
Jaden
right?
Smith.
Yeah. Jaden Smith. I can't even remember his name. Yeah, that one. They're going to be in one movie now, and they're looking for a Karate Kid. Andy, what do you know about this?
The Karate verse is upon us. I'm so old. I will now live to have seen a fourth Karate Kid come of age. This property originally came out in, of course, 1983 with Ralph Macchio as the titular Karate Kid. There were 2 more sequels. This has been rebooted twice already. It was rebooted in the mid-90s with Hilary Swank as the Karate Kid and the late Pat Morita reprising his role as Mr. Miyagi. In the 2000s or so, Jackie Chan came on board with Jaden Smith, and they went to Hong Kong or Japan or wherever. And there was another movie. There's been the TV show that's been a big hit, and so finally now the Karateverse is going to be complete, and they're going to reboot the property yet again. Ralph Macchio's almost 60, or he may be 60 now. Kind of bring them all together. It's a brilliant move. But it makes me roll my eyes because, again, it's old man Daniel, old man LaRusso, back in the saddle. He's got to teach someone karate. He's been playing this poor character for 40 years in one sense or another.
Netflix's Cobra Kai announced that they were going to be doing their 6th and final season earlier this year. So that show is wrapping up. Assumedly, this will be following hot on the tails of that, because like Andy said, it's the Karate Kid verse, right? Karate verse, Cobra Kai verse. There is an open casting call for the kid. They don't know who they're going to use yet. They're telling kids to submit content at karatekidcasting.com. Submit your audition tapes, right? Like post on TikTok, promote our film for us. Huge move from Sony. Boy, just great.
I was going to say that a casting call like this is nothing but PR. They are absolutely not going to watch any of those auditions. I guarantee that they already have a short list of 10 kids to fill this role. Yeah. It's not going to be anyone that gets discovered, but they're going to have 10,000 people submit karate tapes and try to go viral on TikTok.
They're currently in talks with all 4 of the new Ninja Turtles, and everybody else is B-string, right? One of them will pan out to be a child actor that will work, but we'll see. You know who could apply for this? Marisa Barrera, because apparently she's not doing Scream VII. Wild story, actually just broke right before we started recording. Marisa Barrera has been dropped from Scream VII after social media posts amid the Israel-Hamas war. This is not great, because she's definitely the star of Scream 5 and 6. I have a theory behind this, and it involves a bit more about movies and casting. But I did want to get your hot take, Andy. Anything on what is this? What is this about?
So this is just part of a larger divide within Hollywood. Today, actually, Susan Sarandon was dropped from her management company because of comments made, which didn't seem too inflammatory to me. Same thing with Marisa Barrera. She's also been cut from the whatever new Cloverfield movie was in development as well. So she's kind of getting axed a lot lately.
Oh, dang.
So yeah, it's not just this film, but it's definitely very divisive topic in Hollywood right now.
Yeah. Her comments listed here in the Hollywood Reporter include, quote, Gaza is currently being treated like a concentration camp, cornering everyone together with nowhere to go, no electricity, no water. People have learned nothing from our histories. And just like our histories, people are still silently watching it all happen. Here's the thing. And I think this is worth mentioning because I believe that I'm right about everything, and I want to jump in here. I'm sure that comments like this ruffle feathers. I have no doubt that that's true. But I should say, like, I think it's notable that Marisa Barrera has been a little limelighted by co-star Jenna Ortega in these movies. If you don't remember, in Scream V, Marisa Barrera is the lead. Her sister, Jenna Ortega, is nearly murdered but manages to survive. And let's remember, Scream V came out in January 2022, right? 2022. In March 2022, that year, X comes out, where Jenna Ortega is not only featured prominently, she's on most of the posters. She's most of the marketing for that movie. She gets about as much marketing time as Mia Goth. And then November 2022, Wednesday comes out on Netflix, and Jenna Ortega immediately gets pushed to the front. She is landing hosting responsibilities on SNL, and clips are coming out on TikTok of the show. And then in Scream 3, 2023, Jenna Ortega is immediately pushed to equal casting. She's back for the film inexplicably with this. Well, I guess they explained this line about her coming to college, and Marisa Barrera goes with her.
It's hand waving.
It's real hand waving. Like, so I don't mean to say that what Marisa Barrera said didn't bother people. Maybe it did for whatever reason somebody would be bothered. I do mean to say that, like, Jenna Ortega is absolutely going to be the star of Scream 7. And they're just going to do some kind of, hand wave thing to Marisa Barrera's character, who is very much set up to be the protagonist of Scream 7 at the end of Scream 6. Scream 6 has this whole, like, dark passenger thing. They're just going to, I don't know, hand wave her away. I mean, they got rid of, Sidney Prescott, right? Why couldn't they change it up again and just get rid of your lead? It's the damnedest thing. Scream will continue. I'm really bummed for Marisa Barrera. That's what I have to say about it.
It's unfortunate, and she seems to maybe been blacklisted a little bit, as have a number of other celebrities for their kind of stance on this situation in the Middle East. We'll see just what that leads to, and where. I mean, it's kind of affecting people on all sides of it. It's unfortunate, but yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Jenna Ortega is rocketing. Her star is on the rise, and it's so easy to. And you know what? Maybe they just didn't want her, and they just needed a reason, and now they have it to cut. But
maybe, right. Like I don't know.
Jenna Ortega can put that whole franchise on her back.
Yeah, I feel like if Jenna Ortega was not in these films or had been axed in Scream 5, this may not be happening, because Scream wouldn't have a lead to pivot to. But she's right there, and Wednesday season 2 is going to come out, and it's just so obvious to me that they're like, we want to make money, right? Like, we're changing directors over from Radio Silence to, what's his name? The guy who did Happy Death Day, Christopher Landon. Like, why not change the guard, right? Like, I don't know. And anyway, speaking of changing guard, we got to talk about these Superman Legacy casting announcements. I'm gonna be honest. I don't think I hate any of these, like, right off the top. But Andy, you're the comic man here on the show. When did you hear about this, and who's being cast in new Superman Legacy?
Just yesterday, one Nicholas Hoult was cast as Lex Luthor. Nicholas Hoult, of course, was in Mad Max Fury Road, Renfield. He's been in a ton of things. He's having a great career. He was Beast in the X-Men First Class movies over a decade ago. He has actually auditioned for both Superman and Batman. He auditioned for the Robert Pattinson Batman that eventually went to him. So he's been close to the edge, and he was finally was given this role as Lex Luthor. And I'm really excited about this. I think he's a phenomenal actor who can maybe do this role justice. This role hasn't really been done correctly ever. Like, even the Gene Hackman one is kind of classic, but it's very campy. It's very, like, played for laughs. The Jesse Eisenberg Lex Luthor was real bad. They decided to make him Mark Zuckerberg and make him this eccentric, quirky, strange billionaire, which he is not like that in the comics at all. If you've ever read any Superman comic, he's like a shrewd businessman that will win at all costs. that's the character, and that's not what Jesse Eisenberg was. So I think if they stick to that, this could be great. And I also hope that he's not just the villain. I hope he's just a player, kind of like how Jim Gordon is in every Batman movie. I hope that we have Lex Luthor is just someone who's going to be there, but he's not necessarily the main villain.
Yeah, I think the casting is a good decision. Nicholas Hoult has done a lot of great work. We already know he looks good bald. He was in Mad Max Fury Road, right? He's done a lot of comic book stuff. Most recently, I loved him in The Menu, where he is like a total dick, man. Like, he's great in The Menu. And then in the Great on Hulu, 3 seasons of being the king and being a complete monster, but also hilarious. Like, Hoult is really good at playing kind of a conniving weakling, right? A man who's like a bit of a coward, but has power and believes he knows how to use it. And like in that way, I think him playing opposite the Man of Steel could be really cool. It will definitely be different than what we've seen, just like Eisenberg's like Zucker Luthor was different than what we've seen. But I think Zuckerberg. What am I? Jesse Eisenberg's character. Yeah, right. He was kind of like this Mark Zuckerberg, Lex Luthor guy. It'll be different, but I think he's a solid pick. Also, Skylar Gisondo as Jimmy Olsen, right?
Right. That was just announced today. Skylar Gisondo is a very underrated actor. He's literally been working since a child. Has been in the industry over 20 years. He was most famously in Booksmart from a few years ago. He did 30 episodes of The Santa Clarita Diet. He's also in The Righteous Gemstones. Jimmy Olsen is, of course, the photographer of the Daily Planet in the Superman verse. And Skylar Gisondo is someone that has 70 acting credits in different, like this man's been working for a long time. And he's part of that generation of people like Beanie Feldstein and Caitlin Dever that we saw in Booksmart, that a lot of those people have gotten bigger roles, bigger stars, and he's just hasn't quite got it yet. And now he's finally landed this really big role. Again, this is like the Lex Luthor. He's going to be a character, a player in the Superman verse, probably be around for several films, not just the one. So I'm really excited for that.
Me too. Yeah, also regular on HBO's The Righteous Gemstones. Big fan. Skylar Gisondo is a great land for Jimmy Olsen. He's perfect. Yeah, I think regarding Lex's like larger role in the movie, I think you're right, Andy. I don't think he's going to be main villain or anything. I think he's just kind of going to be there. Like, he's just going to help fill out the universe, almost a la like Penguin in the Batman, right? Batman. Like, not even really the main bad guy, but like definitely a part of the world, and like that's important, I think. One more story this week before we move into Thanksgiving and our other reviews. Regarding the box office, this Hunger Games prequel, I think, didn't maybe do as well as they had wanted it to. What do you know about this, Andy?
The Hunger Games came in at $44 million, which was just under expectations. They were hoping something closer to $50 million, so it's not too far off the mark. Did pretty well over the seas. However, the big story that's been getting all the clicks is that the Marvels suffers historic drop, almost an 80% drop in the second weekend. Most movies, especially Marvel superhero films, make all their money in the first weekend, and then there's usually a pretty steep 60 to 70% drop off. Nearly 80% for this. This is like, bells and alarms are going off because people are like, this is the largest drop of all time for any Marvel property in the last 15, 16 years of the MCU. MCU is cooked. And it's a little bit hyperbolic right now, but there's a number of reasons why this is not doing well, which we have pointed out. Also, I said this from the beginning, this movie's been set up to fail, and it's doing kind of exactly that. We also had Trolls Band Together come in at number 3, I think, and then Thanksgiving was also in the top 5, which we'll talk more about shortly.
There's a real issue of word of mouth with Marvel's new features. Ant-Man Quantumania held the previous record drop from week to week. It dropped off 69% in week 2. And Andy and I walked out of that movie, along with our buddy who went and saw it, and we were talking about it just in the lobby of the theater. And we were like, nobody's going to go tell their friends to see this. Like, the drop's going to be insane. Like, no one is going to go home and tell them, oh my God, you got to go see the new Marvel movie. And like, there was a time when that's all we were doing, right? It was water cooler conversation, what was going on in the new Avengers film. Like, everybody had to go see it. There was a whole thing about no spoilers, right? Now, people are not doing that. Like, the word of mouth on these things is terrible because A, they're just not as good as they used to be. And B, they're kind of cannibalized from what came before, and like this is part of Bob Iger's short-sighted strategy with Disney that he's been running for the last decade that is starting to fall through. You cannot continue cannibalizing your own properties. It is short-sighted. You will make money today. You will not build a future for tomorrow. And like this seems to be the problem that Marvel's is running into. I thought we were going to see more of this with Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Very pleasantly was surprised to see that wasn't the case. People turned out for James Gunn's work. And it seems like when it comes to announcements that a lot of people are excited about the Superman movie. I bet this doesn't see this kind of drop off. Aquaman later this year? Maybe. I don't know. But what I do know is people are getting tired of comic book movies and they got to do something different. And Marvel's tragically lands in this space just like Ant-Man Quantumania where it just doesn't have the juice it used to have. And that's it. That's what I think it is. As for Hunger Games, man, I remember when I saw the first teaser for this Hunger Games movie, it was like, oh no, who wants this? This feels like a movie that was going to be made by a studio who decided people would want it rather than by the desire of an audience who wants more of this story. But I haven't seen it.
Stone.
That's right. Andy saw it. We're going to talk about it after our Thanksgiving review. We should probably just jump right into it. But Andy, any other thoughts on this before we jump in?
Like I said, it's a shame that the Marvels isn't doing well. It's a much better movie than things like The Flash, than Black Adam, than Ant-Man Quantumania. What was the other one? Shazam 2. So we've had like a string of like 5 pretty mediocre superhero movies, and then this one actually comes along and is better than the rest, but it's just at the tail end of a bad run, and it's just kind of taking the brunt of it.
That's right. If you want to let us know what you thought of the Marvels, if you've seen it, head over to our YouTube comments and just dogpile on with everybody else. Please do. Yeah, definitely won't hurt. But you can also, just email us, mail us script review, or comment or whatever. I promise. We love the engagement. But with that, we need to move into our first review of the episode. Andy's graciously agreed to take the summer on this one. Bit offbeat, bit excited, certainly seasonal. Andy, please take it away.
Thanksgiving. So this movie has a really interesting history. The concept originally started in 2007 as part of Quentin Tarantino's Grindhouse feature, which was 2 movies, Planet Terror and Death Proof, and it had a bunch of fake trailers between them of upcoming like B horror movies, and one of them was called Thanksgiving, directed by Eli Roth, about a Thanksgiving kind of themed slasher killer on the loose in the town of Plymouth. And so that was in 2007. Now, 15, 16 years later, they have made this fake trailer into a very real movie. And that trailer is it's like 2.5 minutes long. It's like a real deal trailer. And it's played for laughs. It's super campy, and it's got so much film grain on it. And anyways, our 2023 version of this, we're in the town of Plymouth. Thanksgiving right around the corner. Happy family sits down, excited for the week to come. But they have a big Black Friday sale that is going on. This starts the film, and whole town is there. Everyone's super excited, but things take a tragic turn, and this Black Friday sale turns into mayhem, a riot. People are killed in kind of cartoonishly grotesque fashion. Someone's like crushed by a shopping cart, that sort of thing. Lots of people lose their lives, and it's this massive tragedy. And then we fast forward 1 year later to the next Thanksgiving, and the town is still like reeling from the riot and all the deaths. And there's people that are upset and protesting that this kind of Walmart-esque box store is still opening on Black Friday. And then, don't you remember the lives we lost? And in the midst of all that, a killer has come to Plymouth to exact revenge on those responsible for the Thanksgiving or the Black Friday riot, for the people in charge, people who let it happen, security, these kinds of things. And so that killer's on the loose. And so we have, of course, in any slasher film, we have a group of teenagers led by Nell Verlaque's Jessica, who are trying to stay alive and also discern the identity of the killer. This also stars Gina Gershon and Patrick Dempsey, as he's like the town sheriff. This movie has a lot of like tropes and really leans into them of a lot of slasher stuff, and it's a lot of fun. Zach, what'd you think?
So I was definitely skeptical walking into Thanksgiving. I definitely figured it was going to be Just kind of a goofy holiday horror. I think my expectations were on par with like how I felt about last year's Violent Night, the David Harbour feature where he plays Santa Claus and he's in like a house and a bunch of baddies show up and he's got to do like this Die Hard thing to save the family from Christmas. You might have seen it. And I kind of felt the same way. It looks goofy, a bit more horror, but it's Eli Roth, right? I like Eli Roth fine. That guy made Hostel and that one movie about a bunch of cannibals in South America, I think. And I know he's working on that new Borderlands feature, which I think is probably going to be not good. But apparently, he stopped down work on that. He got Tim Miller to work on that so he could come over and work on Thanksgiving, which, looking at interviews, is a movie he seems genuinely passionate about. Because watching it, you'd think, okay, it's kind of like a teen slasher movie you go see with your friends. But Roth feels differently. He says this is his send-up to Halloween, to Jason Voorhees. This is his send up to any slasher ever. This is the most slasher oriented movie he's ever done. And it has all the hallmarks, right? You've got your masked villain. You've got your whodunit. It could be anybody in the cast, right? You've got your set of core teens who are all super annoying and text-stirring movies, and you almost can't wait to see get slaughtered. You've got your high body count with interesting kills. Some of them you laugh, some of them you cringe because they're disgusting. I was genuinely surprised at how much I ended up liking Thanksgiving. It is by far from a perfect movie, but it is really fun. And I think it will actually end up being something I end up watching at later holidays. What do you think, Andy? What's the best place to start talking about this?
So I think our setup, our plot is pretty interesting because we start off kind of at a family dinner and we meet our cast of characters. Patrick Dempsey's the town sheriff, and you have Jessica, and her dad is the owner of Right Mart, which is a stand-in for Walmart, of course. And they're kind of arguing, and someone's got to go work because it's Black Friday, and we have kind of a long intro or opening scene where we have this big setup of everyone trying to get into this store. The teens kind of sneak in and try because they're trying to get in on the deals as well. But then the townspeople become unruly and they got really thick New England accents. It makes for a pretty funny and ridiculous opening. And then then quickly pivots to its slasher trappings where we get our killer, who is named John Carver. I think it very much an ode to John Carpenter, who dresses like a pilgrim, but has this like pilgrim mask that he wears. So we don't know who he is, and he's in something that makes this very modern. He's posting a lot on Instagram, posting some of the gruesome kills, live streaming some of it, and that's part of how people know what's going on. Is like, oh look, the killer just posted us on his Instagram. So it's a little silly, but it's so much tongue in cheek. Like some of this, I was like, this is almost like Scary Movie level, like self-awareness.
Yeah, like Eli Roth has like cringe horror down to a science. Like he can torture somebody on screen, and I'm sitting there writhing in my seat, like, oh god, that looks awful, right? Hostel. That happens in this movie for sure. There is some grisly stuff. And one of my favorite moments in the movie in regards to how Roth, I think, looks at technology and horror features, right? How are you going to have somebody getting chased by a slasher if they have a cell phone and can just call 911? He leans in. He leans all the way in, right? So our character is using Instagram and TikTok. Our killer is using Instagram to lure victims in. And one of my favorite like laughs from the movie that I think like shows just how well this movie can walk like the slasher genre and the comedy genre is when early in the movie a character is attacked, and in trying to get away they end up like locking themselves in a closet, and they get out their phone and they can't open the lock screen because they're like their phone's covered in blood, so they try to do Face ID and it doesn't work anyway, and there's like, oh, they like throw the phone. It's so great, and it feels so fitting for every time in my life I can't get my phone to open and Face ID doesn't work anyway, and it's like, god, like I hate this junk. Like Roth takes the opportunity to, I think, bend parts of the genre that would otherwise be a problem into something laughable when possible, and otherwise like sticks pretty close to what's worked in the past as far as horror trappings go. Like, you've got a very solid plot with a big cast of characters, all with different motivations. It's anybody's guess who the killer is. I feel very confident in saying I had guessed who it was going to be before I even saw the movie, and I was totally right. Love that. That feels great. Makes you want to go tell your friends I was right about the movie. Like, yeah, I was surprised at how well I was engaged with what was going on in the film, not only because the plot moves effectively with a lot of characters, but because the tone's sharp. It's horror, it's funny, like it's cut on a razor's edge. Like it's either one or the other, I think, typically, which can turn people off because sometimes it might feel too tongue in cheek. And I should say before I wrap this point, because it's getting way too long, some of the references to seasonal events are a little outdated. The Black Friday riot at the opening of this film is like half a decade old. But again, they came up with this gimmick in 2007 when Grindhouse came out. So it's been a minute. I feel okay saying your Black Friday references are a little outdated, but still, like, the spirit of it is there, and I can respect that. It's a nostalgic Thanksgiving movie, right?
Yeah, I it's definitely a lot of fun. I felt that way as well because we do so much online shopping now. We don't have the kind of right. I recently saw a tweet that's like, I miss the days when people die on Black Friday, which is real dark. But I think one of the things that kind of is doesn't work as well is that the plot both moves very quickly, like too quickly a lot of times, and also not fast enough. It gets it'll get slow in moments, and then it'll also move through set pieces very quickly. And it has a lot of individual setups that are really fun. Like there's a chase in a school, there's an action scene during a parade. There's and these a lot of this is taken from the 2007 trailer, like shot for shot, or at least the idea is there's this really cringy moment involving a trampoline and a knife, and so there's a lot of like small set pieces that work really well, but they don't necessarily all connect together very well. It's not very fluid from kind of step to step. That's kind of the only thing that doesn't work as well. And it's a lot. Like Eli Roth definitely has so many things he wants to cover, so many scenes he wanted to do, and he just kind of threw them all in together.
Yeah, it ends up moving pretty timely at an hour 46. Like, it's not a long feature, which is nice. And I guess like what I thought I'd compare this to in my head when I had heard about the Grindhouse connection was like Tusk, right? The Kevin Smith movie. That was a horror film where Justin Long, a podcaster, is slowly turned into a walrus surgically by a crazed scientist. And that came about as a conversation on Kevin Smith's podcast with his co-host buddies. And they talked about it one day and they thought it was funny. So he wrote it down and then kept thinking about it and ended up turning into a feature. That's a little how this feels like with Grindhouse, right? Like Eli Roth was making this thing with Tarantino and Rodriguez. And he was like, yeah, I'll put a trail in there. It'll be funny Thanksgiving. But like, I can confidently say that this is such a more competent work than Tusk was. Like, obviously Roth and Smith are two very different filmmakers. And for a goofy idea that somebody came up with and just kind of put together, Roth manages to put this together really efficiently. There are definitely plot holes, for sure. But like in any slasher, there's plot holes. There's a great scene where one of the characters discovers like a wealth of security footage from the night of the riot, right? The Black Friday riot. And it's like a year old and it's on a hard drive and it's like 4K and it looks perfect. And it's like, that's never, ever how security footage, like that's whatever. Don't think about it too much. All right. Don't worry how the killer gets from this side of town to that side of town so fast. Like, it's not the point. The point is you're supposed to just kind of have a fun time hanging out with your friends going to see Thanksgiving. And I think in that way, like the best time to see this film is like opening night with your buddies, right? Like I feel like I saw it on a quiet Sunday morning, but like I could almost hear kids like snickering, like, in the theater, like watching it, just goofing off with their friends, laughing about stuff. Like, and in that way, like that's exactly what a slasher is supposed to be. So when I go watch Eli Roth talking about in interviews about how excited he is for people to see this, that this is his like slasher film send up, I have trouble disagreeing with him. I think he's kind of right. I think in that, like, if that's what he was aiming for, I think he nailed it.
Yeah, I saw this with kind of a smaller crowd. I purposely skipped a busier showing because I was like, that's going to be all teenagers and I'm probably going to lose my mind. So I went with a little bit more mixed. I wanted to talk about our cast a little bit here. It's actually a pretty large group because we have our group of teens, which is like 6 people, and then we also have our group of adults, which is almost as many. Patrick Dempsey, like I said, is the local sheriff. You have her dad, Thomas Wright, right, played by the great Rick Hoffman, who's like the town, like the rich guy in town. You got other supporting adults, and then you have like 6 kids, and they're like, it is so funny because they're so stereotypical and so tropish, but it's like, it's so self-aware, like it's on that on purpose. But it's like a group of jocks and their girlfriends, and like they're mostly mean, but are the main character, Jessica, is the one nice one. I did want to mention one of the teen characters is played by Addison Rae, who, if you don't know, is a massive, massive TikTok star. Shot Up was one of the she was like number 1 or 2 for a while as far as most followers on TikTok. She's now pivoted into film and TV, which is kind of crazy to think about. That's where she started from.
Yeah.
And she's finding this not a huge role, not the lead or anything. But it's a big cast, and it's fun. Like I said, our jocks are mean, they're cruel, they don't care about anyone. They meet fitting ends. And our main, we have a couple of good people who are trying to solve the case, but also stay alive. So it's a fun time. Gina Gershon is criminally underused in this, but fun to see her in here.
Gina. I can't talk about it because it'd be spoilers. Gina Gershon's great in this movie. Everybody's great in this movie. We got to move on, unfortunately, because we got a long show. We got a lot to get to. I don't know if I have many more thoughts on this. I don't want to spoil it, but I can say before we get to formal recommendations, that, like I said, I was surprised at how much I ended up liking Thanksgiving. Like I went in with a bit of a smirk and ended up walking out with a grin. So with that, Andy, any other thoughts for recommendations?
I think I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend Thanksgiving?
Definitely recommend it to fans of horror. If you're into the horror genre, you'll be right at home. Like, you'll recognize so many references to other horror properties, all the slasher genres as well. Like I said, it's really funny. It's pretty self-aware. It's somewhere between Scream and Scary Movie in its self-awareness. There's some really funny moments. There's a lot of really cringe, painful moments as well. Eli Roth really juggles all aspects of it. Definitely fun in a group. If you're not a fan of horror, probably skip though.
Yeah, same. It's definitely a horror film for horror's sake, but it's PG-13. I think it's got to be R. It's rated R for sure. No, I take it back. This is an R-rated feature. Yeah, they start dropping the F-bomb fast in the open. I remember being like, oh yeah, this is definitely an R-rated film. Great for kids to sneak into, right? Not that I'm advocating you should sneak into movies, but this just feels like that kind of feature. And in that way, like I think it lands it. I think Thanksgiving's not a bad time. Definitely horror though. Like if you're not a horror person, don't throw this on during the holiday thinking it's going to be Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. It isn't, but not a bad time. With that, we got to move into our next segment because we got to move through this. Andy, you mind introducing this for us?
It's time for the trailer park. So we have 2 quick trailers that just came out this week. The first one that dropped is for Madam Web, which is a Sony Marvel production offshoot of Spider-Man. Takes place within the Spider-Man universe. Does not involve Spider-Man himself and stars I have the wrong person pull up. Dakota Johnson as Madam Web, yes, or Cassandra Webb, which I don't really know from the comics. I don't read Spider-Man. I probably should. But we just know that she is somehow probably bitten by a spider, has spider powers, and from the looks of the trailer, she puts together a spider team, also involving Sydney Sweeney and Isabella Merced as other spider superheroes to fight another spider guy. There's a lot of spider people in this. This trailer looks both ridiculous and also like it's going to be a hit. It's got really cheesy dialogue. Their Twitter was mocking. She's got this stupid line about like, oh, he was in the Amazon with my mother researching spiders
before she died. Yeah.
We see Adam Scott as making an appearance as Ben Parker, Peter Parker's uncle who fatefully. Yeah. It's on the IMDb page.
It's on the IMDb page.
Yeah. Ben Parker is, of course, Uncle Ben, who is killed in the Spider-Man universe. With great responsibility, or with great power comes great responsibility. This trailer's all over the place. It is cut so fast I cannot see anything. And like Sydney Sweeney's supposed to be a big selling point of this movie, and they just have the worst looking shots of her, like she's in glasses or like her hair's not done up. She just kind of looks. It's the old trope of she's gonna throw off her glasses and all of a sudden be super hot. But this trailer moves so fast you cannot tell what's going on. It looks like a huge mess. But I think it's gonna be like the Venom movies and make a ton of money.
So I rewatched Suspiria, the Luca Guadagnino film, just a couple months ago. For October. It's getting into the Halloween season. And I was reading about Dakota Johnson training like for months in the dance studio, like with Mia Goth. The two of them got to be really good friends, like months of work to get the performance dialed in and tuned to be perfect. And Dakota Johnson brings this level to her work because she doesn't want to be the 50 Shades of Grey girl, right? Like it would be really easy to just be the 50 Shades of Grey girl for the rest of your career. And she works so hard to not be that. It is crushing to watch her in this trailer because she looks like the most vapid, shallow character I've ever seen in a comic book feature. This is Sony's Spider-Man villain universe, right? Like, and Sydney Sweeney and Dakota Johnson and friends have all been sucked into it. Do you think Adam Scott's going to say at the end of the movie, with great power comes great responsibility? Or do you think somebody will say it to him and he'll have like a reaction shot where he's like, oh yeah, that's smart. Like, when do you think that's going to come in? Because I bet he just says it. I bet that's like the tip off that he's Ben Parker, right? Like,
it's either that or he says like half of it where he's like, yeah, I mean, when you have so much power, it just creates, you got to have a lot of, and then he's just going to get cut off.
That's got to be, it's got to be the line. We'll see. We'll see what happens with Madam Web. I think it looks super weak. But you know what? I thought Venom 1 and 2 weren't good, and those movies killed it at the
almost
box
$1 billion.
office,
The first Venom made almost $1 billion.
Outrageous. There's one more trailer we're going to talk about. This is Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. We have already briefly talked about this, of course. It's coming out this year. This is the last comic book feature that is dropping in 2023. This is DC's last film in their kind of current iteration of the DC universe. Of course, Jason Momoa returning as Aquaman, the new King of Atlantis, I think, because I didn't see the first movie, which I realized would sound like it invalidates me even talking about this. But Andy's seen it. He's got thoughts in a second. He's got to return to the sea to continue, it seems, fighting Black Manta from the first film with his new trident. And he's got to go get his brother, played by the guy who's in the Conjuring films, Patrick Wilson. To help him
Ocean
out.
Master.
And Amber Heard did not get her role diminished in this film, despite the absurd amount of press she's had with her late ex recently. What do you think about Aquaman, Andy? Because I think this movie might be, at least domestically, a bit of a dud.
I'm not gonna lie, I have no shame. I'm kind of excited about Aquaman 2. The first Aquaman is a lot of fun. It is, and I will remind listeners, it is DC's like highest grossing property of the last 10 years, like since the DCEU started. Only film to make over $1 billion of the DC universe. The Robert Pattinson Batman, I think, did really well, but still, the first Aquaman did really well overseas, particularly. And the reason it does is because it's a great spectacle. It's a little bit like the Fast and the Furious movies. You don't have to speak English very well to understand it. You just can watch and kind of understand what's going on. The first one had these big undersea battles with huge special effects, thousands of creatures fighting other thousands of creatures. It's a huge spectacle, and it worked so well overseas. And this looks like it's continuing a lot in the same vein. We get a little bit more plot in this trailer where there's this dark trident that Black Manta is trying to get so he can control some sort of dark army, and he needs Aquaman's blood, so he kidnaps his kid, and it's like the whole family affair. We see Patrick Wilson's Ocean Master, who's been, I guess, imprisoned, is being brought out or rescued by Aquaman to also join in the fight. Same thing, there's going to be tons of underwater sea battles, and I cannot wait, and I think it's going to be a hit.
I know. I don't think it's going to be a hit, but I didn't see the first one. I might be wrong. I think it will do good. I don't know if it will be DC's next big earner. But with that, we got to move into our next review of the episode. Andy's going to take this one, bit of a mini review, and then I'll follow up with the holdover shortly after. Andy, please take it away.
The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Longest title ever. I saw this over the weekend. I have seen the first Hunger Games movie, and I've read the first Hunger Games book. People told me that the first book was the best, and so I didn't bother reading anymore after that. Wow. But I have not seen that movie in over a decade. This takes place 60, 70 years before the events of the first Hunger Games. This is, I think, the third annual, so they're very new, and the world is actually reminds me a lot of the video game BioShock, this kind of retro futuristic place where everything looks like the 60s, but they have technology that we don't have. We meet Coriolanus Snow, who I completely forgot who he was at all, but he is the main villain in the original Hunger Games movies and books. He's like the president of Panem. So we see this movie is his origin story, which I didn't know. I thought this was going to be about Rachel Zegler's character. She is, of course, pulled as tribute to be part of these early Hunger Games, and Snow is part of this elite tier of people, this kind of aristocratic class, but his family is going poor, and he needs to find a way to kind of save their reputation. These kind of aristocratic people are sent to be mentors to the tributes, help them survive. He, of course, gets paired with Rachel Zegler's Lucy Graybeard, who's kind of a gypsy character who sings. She sings a lot. Of course, Rachel Zegler has an amazing voice and was in Steven Spielberg's West Side Story. So they gave her a bunch of opportunities to sing, and it kind of feels weird because no one else sings in the thing, but they do make her a musician, and they get paired together. They have a little bit of a romance, but he has a lot of ulterior motives. This movie's really long. It's almost 3 hours. It was all right. It's got some things that work. It's got some things that don't. Probably definitely for fans of the series though.
So I am the perfect person to ask you about this because I have not read any of the Hunger Games books. I haven't seen a single film. So great. But I've got some, I think, good rounded questions that'll appease those of us who have seen them and maybe, keep you interested if you haven't, just like me. So first question, Hunger Games, regarding kind of the trappings of the universe, it is a wildly imaginative visual feast. It's lots of bold colors and huge costumes and cosmetics and wigs. Yeah, and I wanted to ask about our cast in it, right? Some big names. We've got Tom Blythe, Rachel Zegler, you got Viola Davis, Jason Schwartzman, Peter Dinklage, Hunter Schafer, a bit of a newcomer. How do these very real people juggle this very fictional world? Because to look at the trailers, it looks like they're reading Shakespeare. Like it's the realest thing ever. Like for a 2.5 hour film, are you tuned in the whole time, or do you find yourself slipping out of interest?
Like I said, this is definitely for fans of the series. I couldn't remember anything from the first Hunger Games. Like, I didn't know who Coriolanus Snow was. I couldn't remember, even though he's the main antagonist of the original books. So I just didn't remember a whole lot. I feel like this cast is somewhat wasted. Like, Viola Davis is great. She does this very incredible kind of villain thing that she's so good at. Peter Dinklage is also really good. He's not in it enough, kind of. I wish his character was in it a little bit more. Jason Schwartzman kind of plays this late night host and does a good job with that. But our star is Tom Blythe. He's fine. Rachel Zegler is great, but it's just
he's like acceptable.
I've read the first book and seen the first movie, and I just like don't really remember the world very much. To kind of catch everyone up, if you're not familiar, the Hunger Games are a set of like kind of Olympic games, and it's a kill or be killed, where 12 to 24 young people from each district in this fictional place, which is basically a post-apocalyptic North America, 2 tributes are chosen from each each district, and they put them in an arena and say go at it, and they all have to try and kill each other and stay alive. People, and they watch this on TV, very much like Truman Show-esque. It's very gladiatorial combat, and they can get help from outside. There's a whole like PR thing that has to happen as well. You have to get people on your side. You got to get people to donate money and to your cause and send you stuff while you're in the arena. This takes place in a very small arena, which is different from the original films and books. In those, it's like, it's like you're in the wilderness in those original books. You start in this arena and then you go out into like the forest and things and you have to hide. This is just like a small arena the size of like a football field. So it's a much different setup, which was a big surprise to me. Like I said, there's so much, like, if you are not familiar with this property in the books and the films, like, you're going to be pretty lost. I was pretty lost, and I've read one of them. All
right. So yeah, I was going to say, as far as engaging in the larger universe, I wanted to ask about how this film kind of stands. It is a prequel, right? It's before the events of the previous films, but it's also a little smaller in scope. Looking at the runtime, 2 hours, 37 minutes, that's a lot of movie. I know there's supposed to be more of these, right? I wanted to ask about how this kind of fits in, at least the idea of an immediate setup to be followed by a sequel or two, right? Like, I'm assuming this is not going to be the only one.
So this is based on a book. Like, Suzanne Collins did write this prequel, and it is a standalone book, but this movie doesn't feel like a standalone movie. It feels like it's open for more. We'll see if we get that. It's way too long. The first two acts feel like one movie, and Act 3 then, which is another 45 minutes, feels like a completely separate movie. And it's the one time I think I'll probably say that this probably should have just been two different films or a series of sorts. Like, it doesn't really work. It is a little boring in times. There's a whole lot of table setting, lots of people talking in rooms for a long time, setting things up. The action pieces work pretty well, but it's also like, it's PG-13 violence, so I'm just like, I never feel like anyone's like really in danger. Maybe that's just because I've watched too much horror. So yeah, it's way too long. It should have been, I think, either two movies or just really kind of cut down more. There's so much dialogue. The film is also way too dark visually. There's a whole lot of like night scenes or people talking in dark rooms, and I cannot see anyone's face. Like, especially if you're a person of color, like, oh my gosh, I can't not make out any facial features at all. It's a really strange choice.
That exposure.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well,
then
one more question, because this is a mini review. Yeah, regarding its box office, right? Like, I think I was reading that one of the reps for the film said, or the studio said, it underperformed domestically, but I think overseas it a little overperformed. So ultimately, I think Lionsgate produced this. They're pleased. Like, they said, yeah, we're good, which, like, fine. But, like, if you're going to do a few films, which I was under the impression that was kind of the move, but maybe that hasn't been announced. Maybe I'm just got fatigue from, like, young adult series being turned into multiple films. What do you think they may need to change to pivot to some bigger numbers? Because typically, like, subsequent films don't do better. Do you think there needs to be a shakeup? Do you think they should maybe not do anymore? Do a series? Like, I think Lionsgate is interested in continuing the Hunger Games universe in some fashion. Having seen this, what do you think?
I think they got to have less talking, man. There's so much just setting things up, and so many characters. Like, I had a hard time remembering all the characters' names. They just got to pick up the pacing. I think so. We kind of see our character Coriolanus Snow, he's the antagonist in like the main films, but he kind of is an okay guy initially, but eventually his like need to get ahead and win, and this like kind of turns into a bad guy along the way. It's somewhat of a villain story. So, there's another 60, 70 years, but between this and the next one, I'm sure they could come up with, ways that moves forward.
Yeah. Maybe they'll do like HBO's doing with Dune, and do like a prequel series, the Bene Gesserit sisters, right? About Viola Davis before she got to running the Hunger Games or something. I don't know, but either way, like it seems like there's more gas in the tank being on the outside looking in. Would you agree?
I don't know, because it was $100 million movie, and it's only made $100 million. And you got a ton coming out. I'm not sure what kind of legs this have. It could kind of catch fire, no pun intended, with its with its core audience, and it might have legs. At the same time, there are like 7 new releases in the last week, including 4 releases tomorrow on Wednesday to contend with. So we'll kind of see. It depends on what kind of legs this movie has.
Andy, would you recommend The Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes?
I would only recommend it to fans of the series. If you've read the books, you've seen the movies, you're a big fan of the universe, really familiar with it, the way, nerds like myself are familiar with comic books and Star Wars. If you're that familiar with this, probably you'll enjoy it. People that I know that have read the books and stuff have enjoyed it. I thought it was way too long. It's nearly 3 hours. It feels like 2 movies squeezed into one. Way too much talking. The action scenes work pretty good, but I think it's definitely for the fans.
Yeah. Well, you heard it here first, folks. The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, one for the fans. And speaking of one for the fans, I'm really excited to talk about this last feature. It almost pains me that we had to make this the last feature on this episode, but we talked about it and we figured Thanksgiving was the big release, and that's kind of what people are more interested in seeing. And then we wanted to cover Hunger Games, but I'm so excited to talk about this movie. This is a very special film from director Alexander Payne. I'm going to be doing the intro, so please excuse my clumsy delivery. The movie is The Holdovers. So, it's 1970, December, right? Turn of the century. And a school out in West Massachusetts called Barton Academy, a fictional private school, is not a real place, is closing up for the holiday. And a few students are left to stay over the holiday at the private school because parents are out on vacation or whatever, can't take them. These bummed out students are left at the academy with a cranky old history teacher played by Paul Giamatti. Mr. Hunnam is his name, or Walleye, as they call him at the school, because Paul Giamatti's Mr. Hunnam has a glass eye? I think it's a
lazy eye.
A lazy eye. Yeah, a lazy eye or glass eye. I was looking at interviews after the movie, and people seemed a little disputed, but I'm going to say lazy eye. He smells kind of funny. His hands are overly moist. Mr. Walleye is the crankiest teacher at Barton Academy. And through one series of events or another, ultimately, most of the kids at school leave, all except for one. Played by newcomer Dominic Sessa, who plays Angus, this young, frustrated student who's stuck at Barton over the holiday with his least favorite teacher, along with one very charming cook, Mary, played by Divine Joy Randolph. The three of them make an untimely holiday trio who spend time together for 2 weeks while everybody's gone from Barton Academy. And what looks like a charming, nostalgic, cozy feature ends up being something that is surprisingly more. And coming from the director of Sideways and The Descendants, I don't think this is a big surprise. I'm not super familiar with Alexander Payne's work before this feature, but I've at least heard of those films and the acclaim around them. So I'm very excited to talk about The Holdovers. Andy, what did you think?
So I was a little surprised by this. I mean, I was looking forward to it. It looked funny. I like Paul Giamatti. But I was really stunned by this. I've been telling people, like, this might be a new Christmas classic. It might be a new kind of Christmas film that you watch every year. Alexander Payne he's most known, I think, for Sideways, which came out almost 20 years ago, which also starred Paul Giamatti. He's also done The Descendants with George Clooney, Election from 1999. So he hasn't done a ton of films, but the ones he's done are well known, and the people in his films have also gone on to win Oscars or been Oscar nominated. So he definitely knows what he's doing behind the camera. But this was really touching. It's really heartwarming, but also it's about very serious issues. It touches on issues. It's right in 1970, so it's in the middle of the Vietnam War, and it touches on issues of class and race, and just personal turmoil between all our characters. Divine Joy Randolph plays the kind of lunch lady person in charge of the cafeteria, and her son has been recently killed in the Vietnam War, and he was able to attend this prestigious school, but he wasn't really, but they weren't able to afford college, and that's why he joined the war. And so this is kind of overshadowing her character, but there's this kind of buried grief affecting everyone, which is one of the things the movie is about. But it's a lot of fun, a lot of really funny scenes, because you have this kind of generational divide. You have Paul Giamatti's character, who's a middle-aged, single, depressed teacher, and then you have these young, not quite college-age students who are acting the way teenage boys do. I thought this was really charming. It's not perfect. It's got some issues, but I was really surprised.
Yeah, so I think where I want to start to talk about this is our setting, and then I want to quickly move into characters, because our trio are very interesting and nuanced, and each have their own motivations and means. But before I get into that, I want to talk about part of the reason I think this film feels what people would describe as cozy. It's funny, I was looking at an interview before we started the show here, and Alexander Payne has gone on record saying he hates that people call this movie cozy. He's like, what does that even mean? That's not even a real thing. But like, I think it's what this movie feels like for a couple of reasons. One, because it's all shot on location. Not a single soundstage shot is in this film, which I did not know. They shot it all out in a school in West Massachusetts, I think. Like I said, Barton is fictional. I don't remember the exact name of the school where they shot it. Number two, it was a quick shoot, and it's all digital. They all shot it on a small RE camera, and then they added all the film grain, pop in, everything in post to make it look like it's shot on film, and implicitly like to lean into the feeling that this is a film that came out in 1970. The fonts used in it are all era appropriate. The film opens with like the MPAA logo from like films from the 1970s. Like it leans all the way in. Even the trailer like is this old school kind of looking trailer. So it feels nostalgic. Like on its face, The Holdovers feels like a film from the past. And then, like, the thing that I think makes it work so good as a Christmas movie, outside of just its holiday trappings, of course, because it takes place over the holiday and our characters are directly motivated by a holiday happening, is these, like, unique problems of character. Our three characters, Mr. Hunnam, Mary, the chef, and Angus, the student, are all so different. And they all have wildly different problems. And just like any good holiday romp, like having a bunch of people who come from different corners of society come together and have to overcome their adversities, like to ultimately enjoy life and enjoy spending time with one another through what should be a special time, is like a uniquely holiday thing, right? Like, and I think that's really special. Paul Giamatti's character, Mr. Hunnam or Mr. Walleye, is like so grumpy and cranky and intellectual. Like he's such a smart guy because he's had tenure and he's been at this school all this time, but he's also like wildly small inside, right? And naturally insecure about the things that students roast him for. Mary, the chef, she is an overweight black woman in a school full of thin white dudes. Like, and on top of issues of class that are presented by private school students who have a ton of money and are going to school and are going to have their whole life set up for them. She's lost a son and is actively grieving that at the school where he went and she works, like the very same setting. And of course, Angus is left at the school over the holiday, and he's the only kid who can't get out of it. And his mom doesn't really care. And she's like, honey, it's fine. I'll send you some money for Christmas. Like it's just painful, right? On top of problems with his father. Like, I think the three of them ending up spending time together is really kind of perfect because none of them can solve each other's problems. And like none of them can really understand each other. But what they can do is understand the situation they're in and learn to like respect each other for it. And you end up getting like this, you know, surprisingly effective script, real bouncy, lots of comedy, very sarcastic. I don't know. You get something uniquely special.
Yeah. This unlikely trio works so well together. Dominic, we learn it has been, sorry, that's not his name. Angus has been kicked out of several schools already, and if he gets kicked out of this one, he's going to be sent to a military academy. So he's kind of on the brink. Paul Giamatti's character is brilliant, but is also just not aware of the world. His dean is like, you got to stop failing these really rich kids that donate to, his father's a senator and can help us keep our doors open if maybe you don't fail him. And he kind of just sticks to his guns and say, no, he doesn't deserve to pass. I'm not going to give him. So he kind of refuses to understand the way the world works. Of course, Divine Joy Randolph's character, Mary, is grieving the loss of a son. So we have like these kind of deep, troubled people that find family and solace together. Found family is definitely a theme of the movie.
Yes. I want to talk about how funny this movie is. Like, I know I said bouncy script, it's funny, but like really this movie is a real laugh. Like, whether it be subtle digs at one another, right? Like a student throwing a line at his teacher when he's not paying attention, or Paul Giamatti like rolling his eyes at like something Angus has done, or something maybe explosive, Angus acting out of anger, right? The problem student running into the gym and jumping off a trampoline into the unfinished floor. Like, you get a lot of really great moments, and I can't explain why it works so well. I think it's good pacing. Genuine setting. Like I said, it's all shot on location, and great character work from Paul Giamatti, who plays it like it's Shakespeare, and Dominic Sessa, who is a newcomer as Angus. This is his only on-screen role, and I can't believe it. All he's done is stage plays. This kid immediately needs more work. Like, we need to get him in a Wes Anderson picture. We need to get him in something more special. And speaking of Wes Anderson, I should say that I've noticed a couple reviewers relating this to early Anderson work, something like Royal Tenenbaums, right? Like, not quite as like linear and not linear, but symmetrical as like Anderson's cinematography, but certainly relatable in the way that it's full of kind of warm colors and a cold season and kind of a time where people, I think, long to go again. And Alexander Payne, like it or not, like manages to thread that needle in one way or another to take us to a place where I think we all kind of wish we'd rather be sometimes. Also, fantastic soundtrack. Soundtrack's on Spotify. You should totally go check it out. A lot of old hits, a lot of good stuff. Great soundtrack. Andy, I worry I'm talking in circles. What do you think? What else you got?
Well, yeah, I wanted to talk about our cast. Paul Giamatti, like, he could not make a bad role. And I was listening to an interview with Alexander Payne. When he started out making movies, and he was playing the Hollywood game, he said, once you got above a certain budget, you had to get a star. You couldn't just like get a good actor. You had to get someone who was going to help, a name who would help sell the movie. I learned that in Sideways was the first movie where he was able to choose who he really wanted, which was Paul Giamatti. But apparently Brad Pitt and Edward Norton both read for that role, which is incredible because it's kind of about similar to this. Is about kind of a middle-aged loser, and I was like, you're not going to sell Brad Pitt as a middle-aged loser. But it's been difficult.
Ed Norton, though. I mean,
yeah, he's got too much. Yeah, he would do better, but still too much. Yeah,
this is the worst Ed Norton dig I've ever heard on this show. You were like, well, Brad Pitt couldn't be a loser, but anyway,
yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Alexander Payne is very particular about casting, and he said it can be difficult to get who you really want because of playing the Hollywood game, and that's become easier over the years. But I mean, Paul Giamatti is just pitch perfect. It's like he rolled out of bed to play this role. Dominic Sessa is like, where did they find this kid? Because it seems like I would have thought he'd been acting on TV since he was 5. Really solid. He's gonna get more work. And Divine Joy Randolph, who I actually recently saw in HBO's The Idol, the character in there. She's more of I think she does stand-up comedy. She's more of a comedic person, but does an incredible turn in a much more serious role. This movie might be described as a dramedy, some people would say. But it's charming and heartwarming, but it's got some really difficult moments. Not depressing, but just, really tapping into the difficulties of the human experience.
Yeah, one of these you'll laugh, you'll cry kind of features, right? Like and I think I should have put myself together better when I said it's like early Wes Anderson. It's emotionally disarming. Like you're enjoying it, and then, oh, by the way, here's a big tug at your heartstrings you didn't expect. Like, and that stuff I think is what stands the test of time. I can say confidently I'm definitely going to make people watch this with me next holiday for sure. I don't even know if it might be available like VOD this holiday, and I'll probably watch it again.
Be streaming. Yeah,
it'll
be streaming.
Like, I don't know where
by
it'll go.
Christmas.
Yeah, but like I will probably end up paying again to watch this movie. I will say it's a little too long. That's the one I think real critique I've got of it. It's 2 hours 13 minutes. You probably could have tightened it up to like, 105. But like it's fine. Like I think it gets us over the line just fine. If anything, too much of a good thing is never a bad thing, right? Like overall, I need to probably watch more Alexander Payne movies. I need to go back and visit Sideways. I still can't believe I haven't seen that film. But any other thoughts or recommendations?
Real quick, so when Sideways came out, Sideways is a small Oscar film, went on to make like $350 million. And again, the studio was like, you got to get a bigger name. You got to, and then, that movie stars Paul Giamatti.
And Thomas Hayden Church, right? They're wine guys?
Right. Thomas Hayden Church, Virginia Madsen. Like, it is a small cast of character actors, not big names, and that went on to be a huge hit. Actually affected Merlot's sales. There's a crazy story behind that, but that is a classic film, and Alexander Payne's made another one. And I am ready for recommendations.
Andy, would you recommend The Holdovers?
Absolutely. It's really surprised me. One of the best movies of the year. Great performances. It's a great Christmas movie. It's funny. It has some really serious moments. Like I said, taps into social issues about class and race. It is a little bit too long. It could probably be 10, 15 minutes shorter. But really enjoyed it. Highly recommend.
Same. Holdovers is rock solid. I think it's a new holiday classic. Like, and I know we talk about big cinema on this show a lot, but like really, I think even if you're not into big indie cinema, this movie is really cool. It is slow. I will admit, if your friends want to watch Rudolph and you're like, no, let's watch The Holdovers. Tonally, you're probably off the mark. It's probably not what they're looking for. But like, dude, I can't wait to really get cozy on the couch under like a big fuzzy blanket or like a cup of hot chocolate or a cup of coffee and watch The Holdovers. Like, I'm going to make people I love in my life watch it, and they're going to tell me it's too weird of a movie, but it's not. It's a really cool feature, and I think it's great, and you should totally check out The Holdovers. I wish we could have talked about it sooner. God, The Holdovers is neat, man. I'm really excited to watch it again. So keep an eye out on the top 10 of the year list. I think you might see The Holdovers come up again, for me at least, possibly Andy too. But that's Off Script episode 233. Good Lord, Andy, another long one. These mini reviews are killing us. But I think they're important, and I want to keep doing them. But man, like I also want to keep the show under an hour, and we end up running over every week. What are we watching next week?
So a ton of releases this week that are all actually coming out on Wednesday. Because of the Thanksgiving holiday long weekend. We are going to be taking a look at Ridley Scott's Napoleon, his big epic biopic starring Joaquin Phoenix and Vanessa Kirby, nearly 3 hours long. So that's the big one. And then we're going to be doing a 180 and taking a look at some small cinema at the specialty box office, Emerald Fennell's Saltburn, which also opens tomorrow, starring Jacob Elordi and Barry Keoghan. We don't really know what this movie is about. Like it's all we know is Barry Keoghan's character goes to live at Saltburn with aristocrats that he doesn't really fit in with, and that's all we really know. Also opening, if you're interested this weekend, is Disney's Wish, their animated feature, and Nicolas Cage's Dream Scenario. We'll see what comes out on top over the weekend. It's going to be crowded.
There's so much going on at the box. There's too many movies coming out this week. It baffles me that like a new Nick Cage feature is coming out. I'm pretty sure from A24, and we're not just immediately seeing it, but there's too much other stuff to go cover. Like I think, I don't know. I hope, we were talking about this before the show. You don't think Napoleon's going to do well. I hope it does well, but I also am thinking it's tracking to lose money for sure.
So I was looking at tickets, and it's playing at IMAX. And on Monday, I looked at IMAX tickets for the Wednesday evening showing at 6 p.m. No tickets bought.
So
I'm already thinking of my puns, like Napoleon defeated at the box office. Salt bombs. Like
Napoleon won't. Yeah, right. Salt bombs. I was going to tell you same thing. I bought my Napoleon tickets real early. My pop's not going to go see it when I'm in town over the holiday here. and we're gonna go see it Friday after it comes out. And I bought it at a IMAX screen, like full IMAX in the town where they live, with laser IMAX. And I was like, I want to go see it on big screen. It's Ridley Scott's Sword and Sandal. I want to do it big, and I'm excited. And you told me that you thought tickets had been undersold to your theater through Thursday night. So I checked my Friday night, 7 p.m. IMAX screening. Dude, there's like 6 more tickets sold in that theater. I'm like, oh no. Like, I think it might be a dud. And it's just like Killers of the Flower Moon, let's be clear, Apple is not out to make big bucks at the box office. They're there to pull you to their platform. And in that way, they are expecting these numbers. I don't think they're at all surprised by it. But they did spend $200 million on Napoleon, so I hope it turns out to be something big. Also excited about Saltburn. And I think Christine and I are going to go see Wish here in the next couple of weeks. If we do, we'll do a mini review on the show for it, for sure. Because I want to make sure we cover that if we can. But if you like what we're doing on Off Script here today, episode 233, or in the past, episode 232, or you think I should stop talking about YouTube, even though we got a lot of cool things going on over there, you can write us at the show at mail@offscriptfilmreview.com. You can send us correspondence direct. Andy and I will talk about it, look at it, might even read it live on the show. You can, of course, comment wherever our show is up. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. Big things going on YouTube. I feel like I already said that. Our podcast is on iTunes and Spotify and Google Play and iHeartMedia and all the audio outlets you can find it on. You might even be listening to us on there right now. And if you could do us a favor and hit that subscribe button, or maybe just that rating and review. I'm good with that too, man. Just hit the 5. Tell us what you thought, and we'll be on our way. You can check out our website, offscriptfilmreview.com. You can mail us correspondence, mail@offscriptfilmreview.com. I already said that. I feel like I'm winding myself up too much on the outro. So Andy, we should wrap it up. From all of us at Offscript, the home of Bold Cinema, I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for watching.